I want to welcome you today as we continue our series through the Beatitudes. I've really enjoyed doing this for you. And as we've been working through the Beatitudes, we've been going back to a number of different questions. We've asked, how does God treat us as part of God's kingdom? We've asked, what attitudes should I adopt now that I'm a believer? And finally, we've asked, is it really better to be part of God's kingdom rather than the kingdom of the world? And these are all questions that we wrestle with, and these are all questions that we've begun to see answered in our own lives. We've seen that as we develop an attitude of brokenness over our own sin, God saves us and He promises to change us. When we develop a humble attitude of trust towards God, called meekness, He promises to provide for us. And then last week, we looked at when we have a longing to grow, God promises to grow us. Today's Beatitude focuses on the topic of mercy. This is a characteristic that we are called to adopt as believers. And we're going to look at God's merciful response to us and how we deal with others. The topic of mercy in the Beatitudes raises a couple of questions. First, are we showing mercy to others? How do you treat people around you? Are you somebody who's observant of the needs around you? Do you take the time to meet these needs? First question is, are you a merciful person? And the second question as we approach this Beatitude is, what is the relationship between our works and our salvation? As we study this passage of Scripture, there seems to be a dilemma here, where it seems that God actually shows mercy to those who are merciful. What do we do with this, especially believing that we are justified by faith alone? Today I hope to answer these two questions, and altogether we'll see that God is merciful to those of us who are merciful. Look at Matthew chapter 5, verse 7. It says, God is merciful to us who are merciful. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. The first question we have to ask is, what is mercy? D.A. Carson defines mercy as a loving response prompted by the misery and the helplessness of others. Or one dictionary defines it as kindness for those in serious need. For instance, you see those ravaged by a hurricane or a deadly storm, and you have a compassionate heart to want to help, and you actually take action to do something about it. It's looking around and seeing different needs. And why do we show mercy? Well, it's exactly what God has done to us. We have been poor in spirit, but God saves us. We have been mourning over our sin, yet God comforts us. We've been meek, and God has provided. And we've longed for righteousness, and God is satisfied. Has God not been merciful to us? As Christians, we have received so much mercy, and we should allow that mercy to drive us to show mercy to others. If God sent His only Son to die for us, should we not much more show mercy to others? How then are you to treat other sinners? Because, of course, mercy is always directed towards sinners. And even in asking this question, it's kind of funny because we're all naturally sinners ourselves. Are you impatient with people? Maybe you're so frustrated at somebody because they're not growing fast enough. Are you judgmental to somebody? You think, I can't believe that he or she would wrestle with that sin. Are you harsh? You think, why can't they just get over that? Are you unforgiving? I could never forgive that person. Well, actually, all of those attitudes reflects the fact that you're not embracing or understanding all the mercy that you have been shown. Someone who realizes how much mercy they have been shown will show mercy to others. Because God has been patient with us. Because God has waived judgment to us. We should be patient with others and not be quick to judge others. Because God has been gentle with us and because God has forgiven us, we should be forgiving and gentle to others. So who are the people in life that you need to show mercy to? Perhaps it's siblings or parents or friends. Perhaps you know of certain needs in the community or those in this church that even have needs. But mercy is more than just recognizing needs. In order to show true mercy, you step out of your way to meet those needs. One practical suggestion is maybe even making a list of those people who have needs and finding practical solutions to meet those needs. We are to show mercy because God has shown mercy to us. And how then does God show mercy, or how then does God respond to those of us who show mercy? Well, it says the merciful, they shall obtain mercy. And God will be merciful to those of us who have shown mercy. What does this mean? You know, a lot of people who believe in works-based salvation say if you just show enough mercy, you will earn God's mercy. But that's not quite what this passage is saying. This passage doesn't mean that if we show enough mercy, God will give us mercy. This passage really means that as we show mercy, we prove to be God's people, and that on the last day of judgment, God actually shows mercy to us. The whole idea of a works-based salvation, in fact, goes against the Sermon on the Mount. Those of us who are poor in spirit and broken over sin are actually those of us who receive mercy. One author says showing mercy is actually the evidence that we have received mercy. And it's similar to Matthew 6:14, where Jesus says, "If you forgive others, I will forgive you." Likewise, when we show mercy, we prove to be God's people. And thus God looks at us, and on the last day, because we're genuine Christians, He will show mercy to us. Or you think about a verse in James 2:13. It says, "Mercy triumphs over judgment." The idea there is that those who have shown mercy in this life will receive mercy from God on that last day, not because their mercy earned salvation, but because their mercy is an evidence of their salvation. It's like the book of James says, faith without works is dead. Or the book of Titus, Paul says, grace produces works. Those who truly know their God will show mercy to others. And there's a beautiful truth in this passage, but there's also a very sobering warning. The warning is that if we aren't showing mercy to others, if we're not showing forgiveness, perhaps we haven't experienced the mercy of God ourselves. One sign of a true believer is that we care and we meet the needs of others. So perhaps you are not somebody who has experienced God's mercy if you have not shown mercy. Or perhaps you're not knowing your God as you should. But here's the blessing. Those of us who are showing mercy now will receive the full blessing of God's mercy in the future. While He shows us mercy in daily life, there's a coming day where God will unleash the floodgate of His mercy towards us in final salvation. That's amazing. God shows mercy to us who show mercy. We are truly fortunate to be God's people because He shows us mercy. You know, you look at the unsaved world, and the unsaved world doesn't have a God like ours. It doesn't have a God who shows us mercy, who brings us comfort, who provides for us who long for righteousness, and who guarantees provision for those of us who are meek. We are really blessed to be God's children. How merciful, then, are you to others? Because you are fortunate to be God's people, you must show the same mercy He has shown to you. I want to thank you for joining me this week. As I've said, I've really enjoyed doing these studies and enjoyed having the comments and responses that you've given me. I look forward to seeing you again next Tuesday.